I kept the dress in a garment bag behind the couch like it was a secret I didn't know how to carry. When I zipped it open, I'd get hit by a little cloud of ivory and starch, and the memory of my mother smoothing the beaded bodice with her palm, saying, "That's you, Maya. That's what you look like when you're happy." I didn't feel happy. I felt like someone had parked a truck on my chest. The thing about falling in love is, you think it means the difficult people will soften, that if you bring them into your happiness, they'll relax and be generous because love is contagious like laughter on a warm night. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes you earn it. Other times, the people you hoped would smile find a way to make the smile your job. Ethan's mother had a way of doing that. Even at the beginning, when I met her in that dining room with the oil paintings and the seagrass rug and a bowl of lemons that looked like they came from a movie set, she had me working for it. She kissed the air near my cheek and said my name the way you might say a word you're practicing in high school French. "Maya," she said. "Do tell me about your career." "Graphic design," I said. "I freelance and I work mornings at Bean Barn in Newport." She glanced toward the kitchen like I'd just said ferret wrangling. Right. I can pinpoint the exact moment I knew I loved Ethan. He'd shown up at Bean Barn early on a Saturday, hair a mess, t-shirt rumpled, and he'd just stood there, watching me pour espresso shots like the rest of the world didn't know what it was missing. He didn't flirt. He didn't try to be cute. He took his coffee exactly how I made it, and he tipped with his whole hand like everything was a gift. He made whole-body room for me without ever saying the words. That's the thing I held on to when his mother stopped calling me Maya and started calling me something else. "Maria," she wrote in her initial email about rehearsal dinner options, which was funny because the subject line said "for Maya" in all caps. Then it got subtler, like when she added 30 extra guests to the wedding list without telling me, all surnames that matched her tennis circle. And when I tried to talk through the seating chart with her, she said, "Oh, you don't need to worry about that, dear. I'll take it from here. I've done this before." It stung every new day in a new place. She asked the florist to swap my wildflowers for long-stem roses because they photograph better. She sent a picture of a cake that looked like marble and said, "Let's be elegant, Maya." She told the DJ to cut the playlist I'd built with the songs my dad loved and added something she called classics, which were the least friendly songs from the 80s in a waltz. She texted the bridal party a group message encouraging them to wear muted tones, nothing bright, it distracts. The bright thing was me. I kept telling myself that, and I had flashbacks of all the things that dragged me to this one day. Every extra hour I took on at the coffee shop when the winter tourists came in gloved and short-tempered, every design project I took from small restaurants trying to reprint menus for a world of allergies. Every time I said no to dinner out and yes to saving. The tiny apartment I kept neat because it was mine and because I liked the way the morning smelled when it came through my one big window. He proposed with tacos on the hood of his car at Brenton Point. He didn't have a ring because he thought I'd care if it wasn't what I wanted. He asked with his eyes and the way his voice filled the hole in the wind. I said yes with a laugh that I didn't know I had. After that, everything was a list and a permission slip. The venue was a renovated boathouse off Thames Street with huge windows that opened to the harbor and floors so old they hummed. It smelled like salt and old wood. The form asked who would be the primary contact and how communication should be handled. I wrote my email and Ethan's cell, and when the deposit came up, his mother jumped in with a graceful wave. "We insist," she told us, hand on my arm. "Let us cover the venue, it's tradition." Here's what I didn't realize until too late. The person who pays often asks for control in the unspoken lines between everything. The venue wanted a responsible party. The responsible party was the Parker name at the bottom with a sharp stroke where Victoria signed. It wasn't my name. It wasn't even Ethan's. We were CC'd. We were included. We weren't in charge. I noticed the tone shift in the emails first. The venue coordinator, a woman named Paula Delgado who showed me a picture of her terrier in the first 5 minutes of our initial walkthrough, started writing, "As per your mother's request," and "We spoke with Mrs. Parker and I'd respond with suggestions or questions and get a polite reply promising to loop me in. It felt like being invited to my own meeting but not allowed to speak. I can tell you the day it became war. It was late afternoon and the sky had that winter color that makes everything look almost silver. I had my dress out to show my friend Janelle, who'd come by with Thai food and blunt observations. She took one look at the long box and said, "You are a whole princess, babe," which made me cry because I hadn't felt like one in weeks. The phone rang and Ethan's name lit up. I answered on speaker, smiling because somebody in our triangle had to. He didn't say hello. He sounded like he'd already run. "Mom just called me," he said. "I need you to hear this from me before she calls you. She's insisting that to avoid drama, she's talked to the venue and they agreed. She says you can't wear white." I thought he was making a joke I didn't understand. Then my body decided it was not a joke. That truck feeling rolled over me. Janelle reached for my hand without looking at me, eyes on the floor like she could keep me from falling through it. There was a second call that day, and the words are burned in some part of my brain I consider private property. She didn't even sound mean. She sounded busy, like she was writing something with a pen and walking down a hallway. "You can't wear white," she said. I called the venue manager. "New rules, sorry." She made rules for a building she didn't own about a color I'd dreamed of since I was old enough to notice the way brides look like they're made of light. I didn't say anything for too long, and then I said everything too fast. Ethan kept saying my name like an anchor he was throwing overboard. "Maya, I'm with you. We're fixing this. I'm so sorry." In the space between that call and breathing again, my brain played a montage of suggestions she'd made. Her crisp voice saying, "Let's think classic." Her hand on my wrist at the jeweler's when I gravitated toward a ring with a moonstone because it looked like the night we got engaged. "In a decade," she murmured. "You'll want a diamond. You will. Trust me." I let her place a thin gold band in my palm and I smiled like I agreed because the woman at the counter was watching, and I have always been trained to be pleasant. Janelle opened wine and didn't pour it, just held it like a prop. "You okay?" she said, asking the question you ask when it's too late for okay. "No," I said, and the word felt like a door unlocking in a hallway where all the doors looked the same. Ethan came over with his keys still in his hand like he hadn't paused from car to apartment. He put his arms around me and I let them be there because I needed a place to collapse. He said, "I called the venue. They told me to have Mom call them. Paula wasn't there. Some assistant said they can't overturn a house policy." House policy. I wanted to find the house and ask it why it hated me. "I'm going down there," I said. Ethan shook his head, but he didn't argue. "I'm coming with you," he said. "We're a team, remember? It's our contract." That word, contract, was a new flavor in my mouth. I'd signed things, sure, leases and non-disclosure agreements for clients. I knew how an email chain could shape your day, but I'd never stood in a situation where a piece of paper decided the color of my dress. Paula met us the next morning with a face that told me she'd been practicing sincerity in the mirror, which I appreciated because sometimes all you can ask for is someone willing to be awkward on your behalf. She shook my hand, shook Ethan's, and then said, "We've had a interesting few days with your mother." "She's not mine," I said quickly. "She's his." Paula smiled a shape that meant we were on the same page. We sat at the heavy table in her office where a framed photo of the boathouse in winter was so beautiful, I wanted to live inside it. She closed the door and lowered her voice. "I want to say this carefully," she said. "We do not have a policy that prohibits a bride from wearing white. That would be not a good look." I felt a laugh rise in my throat like a cough. "What we do have," she continued, "is a clause in our contract that allows for a client to set an event dress code. Your mother—" She paused and corrected herself. "Mrs. Parker, as the primary contact, requested we set a dress code that excludes white for all attendees. When my assistant asked for clarification, she said that meant especially the bride, to avoid confusion and conflict. It was presented as a decision you'd all agreed to. She named it a protective measure." My mother does not speak for us, Ethan said, and the way his jaw worked told me he wanted to chew through the table. We didn't agree to that. We would never. Paula leaned forward. I believe you. She slid the contract toward me. I saw my name nowhere near the signature lines. Here's the thing, she said. We need a primary contact. We need someone who can approve decisions so we're not changing things in the 11th hour with vendors who are too busy to play telephone. Your mother is the one on record. We can only accept changes from her. Do you see the bind? I did. It wore pearl earrings and lived in a house with lemon bowls. So we're stuck? I asked. Paula tilted her head. No, she said slowly, in a way that made the air shift. We can issue an addendum. We can change the primary contact. It requires consent from the current primary or a buyout by a contracting party, authorized to assume the remainder. Sometimes families part ways. Sometimes a parent moves or… She gestured vaguely. We have processes. You're saying, I said, feeling my own voice come back from wherever it had gone to hide. If I can get the contract into our names, we can reverse what she's been sneak-adding. I'm saying I can't stop your mother from calling me, Paula said, then lifted a hand that had done this 100 times. But I can stop listening to her if she's not authorized. We're not in the business of playing referee for family dynamics. We want your wedding to feel like you. Full stop. Ethan looked at me in that way that told me he was waiting for my call. It was my day. It was our day. It was also the day a woman with a talented memory for disappointment had been treating like a stage. And I realized I'd been trying to be the most reasonable person in the room for months, and all it had earned me was exhaustion. I took a breath that reached my shoes. What does a buyout look like? Paula told me, and it wasn't pretty. It meant assuming the remaining cost of the venue and a fee that sounded like a punishment for changing your mind. It meant cash on hand, not promises. It meant a hard conversation with Ethan about the savings tucked in envelopes, and the ring he planned to upgrade someday, and the couch we'd been talking about replacing for months. The ride home was the first time I'd seen him worried about money in a way that didn't feel like a problem we could laugh through. He kept one hand on the wheel and the other kept clenching like he was counting invisible answers. Don't hate me, I said quietly, but I have it. You have what? I told him about the design gig from the tech startup that needed a brand package in a rush and the bonus they gave me when one of the founders cried at the logo presentation because it reminded her of her late grandmother's handwriting. I told him about the tips I had not touched for years, the ones I'd slid into a jar with a picture of us at the festival with the paper lanterns. I didn't say anything because I wanted to surprise you, I said. I wanted to walk into the furniture store after the wedding and say, pick anything and have it be true. He blinked like he was adjusting inside himself. Maya, he said. I'm supposed to be the one. No, I said, and I surprised myself with the steadiness in it. You're supposed to be my partner. We take care of each other. This is me taking care of us. He pulled the car over and kissed the palm of my hand in a way that made me want to write a sonnet about bones. Okay, he said. Let's do it. We went back to Paula with a bank check and the look of two people who had decided. She read the addendum out loud, and with every line I felt lighter. The new primary contacts were me and Ethan. All vendor changes required our joint approval. The event dress code was specified simply. Only the bride may wear white, off-white ivory, or any shade that could be reasonably mistaken for the color traditionally reserved for the bride's attire. Guests arriving in violation would be offered a selection of wraps in approved colors, or invited to change into event-appropriate attire from an emergency wardrobe provided by the venue. Refusal meant respectful denial of entry. There was another clause Paula suggested, and I loved her for it. Any guest or family member who attempts to interfere with the bride and groom's right to enjoy their event, or who creates a hostile environment through harassment, intimidation, or repeated boundary violations, would be escorted from the premises. Too much? She asked with a grin. Not enough, Janelle said, because I'd asked her to come as my brain and my witness. We added a code phrase for the staff, something the coordinator could say over the radio that would get security to the door without guests hearing the word security, because I wanted 20 years from now for the story to be about the food and the dancing, not a scuffle. We made a list of authorized voices. It was long by my standards. Me, Ethan, the planner we hired for day of management, and Paula. That was it. No aunts, no cousins, no childhood friends claiming to speak for me. When we were done, Paula printed a fresh copy of the contract that smelled like toner and victory. Then I waited. That week crawled. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Victoria called Ethan first, of course, half an hour after Paula notified her of the changes. He put it on speaker and we sat on the floor of my apartment because the couch springs squeaked when you got angry. "This is petty," she said. "This is childish, after everything we've done for you." She never said for us. It was always for you. The "you" said like a burden she was lifting with a sigh. "You tried to ban Maya from wearing a white dress to her own wedding," he said, like he was reciting an obvious fact. "You went behind her back. You lied to vendors. You've been tampering with our plans since day one. We are done with that." "I was protecting you," she said. "You have no idea the drama that woman attracts. Do you know she works at a coffee shop? Do you understand the optics here? People talk." I had the sharp, childish urge to tell her that people talk about everything, and that the way she pronounced optics made me want to throw her phone into the harbor. Instead, I sat on my hands and listened to the person I loved choose me with new muscles. "We love you," he said. "We want you there, but you come as our guest, not our director. If you can't accept that, you can stay home." She hung up. I stared at the wall and wondered what would happen if I doodled a door there and walked through it. I would love to say it was smooth after that. It wasn't. She sent emails to her circle instructing them to wear white as a show of solidarity with the bride, who had been too anxious to choose a dress. She told people I was testing Ethan to see how far he'd go for me. She did what people like her do when their control is threatened. She started a rumor and watched it walk. The morning of the wedding smelled like lemons and mown grass, and the sea stretched flat and shiny as a coin you don't deserve. I woke before my alarm and felt suddenly calm, like the worry had belonged to somebody else, and they'd finally come to pick it up. At the boathouse, the hairstylist pinned a small orchid into my hair because my mother used to pin flowers into mine for every school play. My dad practiced his toast in the hallway, mouthing words and touching his tie like touch was a kind of grammar. Janelle checked on the rings and the macaroons and the backup macaroons because she knows how I think. And then I saw them through the wide glass doors. A crowd of women in stark white dresses like swans in a parking lot, moving as a flock with clutched clutches and hungry eyes. My stomach dropped so fast I felt physically hollow. Victoria led them with a dress that glowed like it had its own electricity. It wasn't just white. It was the kind of white you wear when you want to puncture something. There were layers and a neckline that tried very hard. And she had a veil. It was short, but it was a veil. Paula saw them at the same moment I did. She turned to me and said, "You stay here," with a smile so smooth it could have been custard. Then she touched the radio at her hip and said a phrase we'd ridiculous tested in her office until we couldn't keep a straight face anymore. She didn't say security. She said, "We're all out of lemons." The team assembled at the doors, understated and steady. The officiant adjusted his notes and didn't make a face. The DJ looked like he'd been waiting his whole life to be the calmest person in a room. I wish I could have recorded the sound of 50 rich people being told no. First it's a hiss, then it becomes this sticky staccato laughter. Then it's silence you could lean a ladder on. "Good morning," Paula said. "Welcome. As per the event dress code, white attire is reserved for the bride. We have a lovely selection of wraps and guest dresses in jewel tones and pastels available in the lounge for your convenience. Anyone who prefers to keep their current outfit will be invited to enjoy the harbor from the deck until the ceremony concludes, at which point we can accommodate you for the reception if your attire complies." The words were so polite they were a poem. There was only one answer. They tried for others. They tried for outrage and indignant whispers and tiny storms. One woman demanded to see the manager, which would have worked in the mall of my childhood. Here it brought Paula, who was the manager, who repeated herself in a voice that knew how to be a lighthouse. Victoria pressed forward, like gravity didn't apply to her. "This is absurd," she said. "My son told you I would be arriving in white." Ethan stepped into her line of sight like a curtain being drawn back. He had changed from his getting-ready clothes into his suit without telling me, and he looked so good it hurt a little. "No," he said gently, quiet enough that everyone leaned in. "I didn't. You told yourself that." They locked eyes in a duel that had been brewing since he learned to tie his shoes without help. Paula turned slightly like a camera finding its subject. "Mrs. Parker," she said, using a tone that would calm a stampede, "we're thrilled to welcome you. Today, your son and Maya have a simple, joyful celebration planned. We're here to support that. You have 3 options. Choose from the provided guest attire, wear one of our wraps that cover more than half your dress, or join us for the reception after the ceremony in a new outfit. All are perfectly acceptable under your children's contract." "My contract," Victoria said, and it landed like a shard because it used to be true. "Not anymore," Paula said, and she slid a copy of the addendum across the host stand with a small flourish like a magic trick. Victoria read the line that stripped her of the power she had wielded as naturally as breathing, and I watched her comprehend what it feels like to be outmaneuvered on paper. She changed color. I am not proud that part of me enjoyed it. Her friends looked at her the way people look at a general whose plan involved a cliff they're now falling from. One whispered, "Vicky," with the kind of sympathy you extend when you finally see the person you admire is just a person with hands like everybody else. In the bridal suite, surrounded by warm air and my mother's leopard print scarf tied around a chair because she wanted to be in every room, I waited. Janelle stood at the door like a bouncer with great taste. "You want me to go out there and cause a distraction?" she asked. "I can fake a faint. I've been practicing." I shook my head and pictured the dresses in the lounge. We'd shopped for them like thieves, picking colors that would look good under the lights, sizes that would fit more bodies than not, cuts that felt kind. I'd done it all with a grin I couldn't help. There is pleasure in being prepared. I heard a knock that could only come from someone who'd been knocking on doors all her life. My father opened it and then closed it slowly, like you might if there was a raccoon outside. He grinned. "They've got her in a wrap that looks like a jewel," he said. "She's toned down." "Good," I said. And then I had to sit because my legs gave up. Minutes later, Paula poked her head in with a quiet face. "We're ready for you," she said. "Also, for the record, your mother-in-law picked the emerald. It suits her. People are complimenting it and she's saying thank you like she invented the color green." I laughed for the first time that day. It loosened something in my chest. The ceremony itself was a little miracle of ordinary. The air tasted like the ocean, and the vows I wrote in the back of a recipe card slid out of my mouth like they'd been resting there this whole time. Ethan cried in a way that told secrets about the way he loves. We kissed and it felt like a page turning, not a door slamming. At the reception, Victoria found me. She had taken off the veil and the version of herself that needed to win everything. What was left looked like a woman whose son had grown into a man she hadn't made, and she was only now realizing the gift in that. "I owe you an apology," she said. She said it fast, like if she didn't she'd choke. "No, I owe you several. She reached for words and found thankfully the right ones. "I wanted to direct because it's what I know how to do. I wanted to make sure it looked right, and I confused that with being right." Her hands fluttered and then stilled. "You didn't need me to do any of that. You needed me to be kind. I wasn't." The room blurred and sharpened and blurred again. "Thank you," I said, "because my mother raised me to receive apologies like gifts. That means a lot." "I didn't know how to respect your boundaries," she continued. "And when you took them back in that contract," she laughed at herself in a way that warmed me to her. "I felt humiliated. I told myself all sorts of stories about you to make it make sense. They weren't true," she swallowed. "I don't expect you to forgive me tonight. I hope you will someday. I want to know you, Maya. I want to Learn how to be the kind of mother-in-law you deserve." I believed her. Maybe because the emerald made her look like a different person, but more likely because there's a sound the human voice makes when it's ready to be real. It turns down all the bright lies until only the truth is left. "I want that too," I said. "But we make the rules for our life." "I understand," she said, and the way she said it told me she did. We danced. She didn't try to direct the DJ. She didn't tell the photographer to take a shot from the left because the right is nobody's friend. She lifted her glass during my father's toast and laughed in the right places and went quiet when he said the things fathers say when they remember rocking you in the kitchen when you were brand new. When the band started playing the song Ethan and I danced to on that quiet night in my kitchen, the one where we burned grilled cheese and didn't care, he took my hand and said, "We did it." "We did," I said. And as we swayed, I thought about contracts and addendums and how love is 1,000 little agreements you make every day. You promise to tell the truth, even when your voice shakes. You promise to share the good couch and the last cookie. You promise to call people what they want to be called. And when they tell you no, you learn to hear it as a boundary, not an invitation to try again. The thing about karma is that it's not magic. It's deliberate. It's choosing to be more meticulous than the person who hopes you'll be careless. It's making your plan inside their theater, and then inviting them to sit and watch. It's a venue manager with a terrier on her screensaver who knows how to write a sentence that bends in the exact direction you need. At the end of the night, when the lights were warm and the candles had burned down into little disasters of wax, Victoria came up to me one more time. She didn't ask to take a photo. She didn't tell me how to hold my bouquet. She didn't say anything for a moment, and we stood there in the soft music with the smell of cake and salt. "I am sorry," she said again, simpler, cleaner. "I was wrong. Will you forgive me?" I looked at her, and I thought about the girl I was when I said yes at the hood of a car, about the woman I felt like in that office with the heavy table and the framed photograph of the boathouse in winter. I thought about how people change when you let them. I thought about the small, mean part of me that wanted to win and how good it felt to have already won and not need to rub it in. "Yes," I said. "I forgive you, but let's promise something." "Anything," she said. "You don't make rules for my life," I said, and she nodded like she'd been waiting her whole life to be told the truth by someone who wouldn't flinch. "I won't," she said. "You have my word." We hugged in that stiff way you do when your bodies are still learning each other's language. It softened. It became a real hug. I felt our muscles relax in the same heartbeat and thought, okay, we can do this. We can build something. Later, when the guests spilled outside and the harbor gleamed and the staff packed up the emergency dresses carefully like rare books, Paula found me. She handed me a folded piece of paper. It was the addendum, creased and a little smudged with a small coffee stain at the corner. "A souvenir," she said, "for when you tell this story to someone who thinks boundaries are overrated." "Thank you," I said, and I meant for more than the paper. She tilted her head. "For what it's worth, I've never seen a whiteout attempt go like that." "Whiteout," I repeated, smiling. "Some of them kept the wraps," she told me, delighted. "Said they liked the color better. Your mother-in-law asked where we got the emerald. I told her you picked it." I filed that away under my favorite sentences. When Ethan and I finally left and the night bit at our ankles and the stars came out like gossip, we walked to the car with our shoes in our hands. He stopped and looked at me like he had months ago in Bean Barn. Like the miracle of me pouring coffee was the same as the miracle of me in this dress. "What?" I asked, laughing because I couldn't help it. "You," he said. "Just you." We drove to the little inn by the water that smelled like wood and salt. We ate cold cake in bed and I got frosting on my knee, and the world rearranged itself in that quiet way it does when you realize the hardest part of something is done and the good parts are opening like a gate. In the morning, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Victoria, no subject, no filigree, just this. "Thank you for choosing my son. I'm going to try harder. Can we start over?" "Yes," I wrote back. And then I set the phone face down and leaned over the sill to look at the water, thinking about how the tide writes and erases and writes again, how the map of our family was new and a little messy and exactly ours. People will tell you the moral is don't let anyone pay for your wedding unless you want their fingerprints on it. That's not wrong. But I think the better lesson lives in the space where you realize you can take back what you gave away by accident. You can change the terms. You can sign your name bold across the bottom and mean it. You can fire the director who cast you as a supporting character and walk on stage in a dress that glows because it belongs to you. If you ever find yourself standing in a quiet room with a garment bag and a voice trying to tell you your life is a set of house rules you didn't sign off on, remember this: you are allowed to change the contract. You are allowed to be the person who says, "I hear you, but the story is mine." Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about the story in the comments. See you in the next one.